All right, in this video, we're going to deal with example one. Let me just start with a little bit of a reminder. I don't know when you saw the conceptual video on lease receivable calculation and cost of goods sold, sales revenue. All right, so here's a template journal entry up here at the top, recording of sales type leases. Let's get the easy stuff out of the way. So right here, notice that inventory is just a cost, so that would be given. All right. Now the lease receivable equals the present value of lease payments. I'm putting in quotes because lease payments has a very specific GAAP definition, which could include, for example, guaranteed residual value or executory cost or payments on a index that has fixed or predictable amounts, blah, blah, blah. So there's all these things that can be in lease payments. But then also, even if the item's returned and the residual value is unguaranteed, you would add that. Okay. So you got to calculate this, and there's another video that covers how to calculate that. And then we spoke about conceptually with cost of goods sold is the cost of the inventory item and minus the present value of any unguaranteed residual value. Now, for sales revenue over here, it is technically equal to the quote lease payments, but once again, lease payments is a specific GAAP term that includes more than you would just think of with the lease payment. So sometimes what we could do is say sales rev equals lease receivable minus the present value of unguaranteed residual value. And the reason I like this formulation is because a lot of problems give you the lease receivable, and then you'll calculate the present value of the unguaranteed residual value to determine cost of goods sold. So it's just easier to do two subtractions instead of one subtraction and another present value problem. Okay, so that's another formulation. So let's look at the actual numbers here for this problem. So this problem is the one that the whole lecture note started with. So that's where the numbers come from. And if you need to refer to it, it's best to be watching this with the lecture note in front of you. Otherwise, you got to open it up. Go ahead and open it up and review it if you need to. But it's a 5-year non-cancelable lease with Larry's Leasing. The rent payment is $14.40 a year in advance. The lease does not transfer ownership, has no bargain purchase option. So those would indicate that it's not a sales type lease. And it is not a specialized asset. That means that when the lessor gets it back, if they get it back, and it's a guaranteed residual value, so of course they get it back. No reason to guarantee the residual value unless you get it back. I mean, the lessee's making a promise that it's going to be worth something. They would only promise that if they're going to give it back. So all of this indicates that it's so far that we don't meet any criteria. Let's keep moving. We have an incremental interest rate. We don't care about that one because the only one that matters is the implicit rate of 10%. They tell us the fair value of the Bobcat is $62,548. Now, if you know the lease payment doesn't include any executory costs, then you can be reasonably sure that it's the fair value. But when in doubt, work it out. I encourage you to work out the present value to calculate the lease receivable when you have any doubt, okay? The lessor's cost of the Bobcat is $57,000. That's where the gross profit's going to come from because they lease it. Its fair value is $62,548, and the cost of the Bobcat's $57,000. The residual value is $4,000, and it's guaranteed. Okay. So now we know the lease payment includes $14,404 annuity of 5 payments in advance plus $4,000. So it would be, the lease is going to look like, and it's good to be thinking about this. 14, oh my God, that's the worst forever. 14,404, 0, 1, 2, ... 4, and here's 5. Okay. So this is 4,000, the guaranteed residual value at the end, 14,404, 14,404, and all I did was skip year 3, 14,404, and then at the end 4,000. So GAAP tells you what to include in lease payments. It also tells you to include for the lessor. They'll change a little bit when we get to the lessee, any unguaranteed residual value when the item's returned. In this case, there's no unguaranteed residual value. It's 100% guaranteed. So you would take the present value of the annuity due of 14,404 plus the present value of 4,000 discounted 5 periods. And when you do that, the present value of the annuity due, 14,404, 10%, 5 payments, plus the present value of the residual value, 4,000, 10%, 5 pi, which is 5 periods. All that combined is going to be 62,548. If you don't believe me, try the problem yourself. And if you still don't believe me or you can't get it, look at the beginning of the lecture note. Okay, now we have to recognize, going back to the chart for the prior lecture, that we're in the residual value guaranteed case, scenario 1. And in that case, it tells you the sales revenue equals the lease receivable capitalized. So this is scenario 1 and scenario 3 from that chart is what I call symmetric. 62,548, 62,548, 57,000, 57,000. Bam. You want a 1 case or a 3 case. Scenario 1 over here and scenario 3. I'm afraid to highlight because I was just recording this a few minutes ago and it locked everything up. So please God, not again, not again. Don't make me have to record this whole thing again. Okay, I'm going back to the pen for cover. All right. So item transferred, number 3, and residual value guarantee, number 3, sales revenue is just equal to lease receivable capitalized. So that's the case we're in here. All right. That's what you want because it's just the easiest. And then just for completeness, we have showing the initial day 1 cash payment, which reduces the lease receivable. All right. So that is the journal entry at inception. That is how you would recognize initially the cost of goods sold, sales revenue, and lease receivable, the lease receivable will be subsequently amortized. Cost of goods sold and sales revenue, those are expense and revenues accounts, temporary accounts. So, those don't have to be amortized later. And then you wrote off the inventory because you transferred it to the lessee. So in the next, we'll continue this example in the next video, in another video.